I was 8 years old the first time I saw something that made me understand what death really meant. Until then, death was just a word something people whispered about when old relatives passed away. Something I heard about on TV and muffled voices from the living room when I was supposed to be asleep. But that afternoon, death was right in front of me, laid out on the hot summer asphalt. We were driving home from visiting my great-grandmother's sister. Mom was behind the wheel, her arm hanging lazily out the window with a cigarette between her fingers, the warm wind blowing strands of her hair across her sunglasses. My great-grandmother sat in the passenger seat, quiet as always, folding tissues in her lap like she was preparing for something. I was in the back, staring at the clouds, imagining faces and monsters in them the way kids do when they're bored. The road we were on was long, a 2-lane strip that cut through empty fields with no gas stations or houses in sight. That's when I noticed smoke up ahead, a dark column rising into the sky, twisting into shapes against the bright blue. At first I thought it was a brush fire. My stomach fluttered with excitement the way it does when something out of the ordinary happens. It's like maybe we'd see fire trucks, maybe even get stopped and told to turn around. But as we drew closer, I saw the twisted heap of metal. 2 cars. One was still smoldering, the hood crushed inward, glass scattered like glitter across the road. The other lay tipped against the ditch, one wheel still spinning uselessly. Mom slowed, and the sound of crunching gravel beneath the tires filled the silence inside our car. Remember the way her jaw tightened, her cigarette trembling between her fingers as she stubbed it out in the ashtray without a word. "Lord have mercy," my great-grandmother whispered, her voice trembling like an old church hymn. I pressed my face to the glass. Lied. For a second, all I could think about was how unreal it looked, like something from a movie. Then I saw him. He was lying in the middle of the road, not far from the first car. His shirt was torn open, his chest rising and falling in a shallow, frantic rhythm. But it wasn't his face, or even the blood that froze me where I sat. It was his arms and legs, or rather the absence of them. They weren't there. Just ragged stumps, red and raw, twisted in ways I couldn't comprehend. For a moment, my brain refused to understand it. I thought maybe he was buried in something, or tangled in wires. My child's mind kept trying to find excuses that made sense, because the truth was too big to take in. "Don't look," Mom snapped suddenly, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. But it was too late. I'd already seen him, and he was still alive. Mom pulled the car onto the shoulder, gravel crunching loud under the tires, then silence. The kind of silence that presses on your ears when the engine cuts off, when all that's left is the faint ticking of hot metal cooling. My legs bounced against the seat, nervous energy I couldn't control. I didn't know if we were supposed to stop or keep going. I didn't even know what the rules were for things like this. "Stay here," Mom said, her voice low but sharp. She put her hand on the door handle. My great-grandmother grabbed her arm. "Carmen, don't. You don't know if it's safe." "If what, Granny?" Mom hissed, more fear than anger in her tone. "You can't just drive past. Someone's hurt." The way she said hurt made me shiver. Hurt was a scraped knee, a twisted ankle, the kind of thing that could be patched up with a Band-Aid or ice pack. Whatever I had seen on the road wasn't hurt. It was something else. I leaned forward, my seatbelt locking as I tried to peek between them. "Mom, is he going to be okay?" Neither of them answered me. That silence told me more than words ever could. Mom opened the door and stepped out, shielding her eyes against the sun. The smell hit me, then burnt rubber, sharp metal, and something else underneath it that I didn't recognize, but knew was wrong. My stomach clenched, my tongue heavy with the taste of copper. Great-grandma whispered a prayer under her breath, a string of words half mumbled, half sung. Her fingers worked the tissues in her lap like rosary beads. I pressed my forehead to the window, eyes locked on Mom as she walked toward the wreck. She moved carefully, like the ground might break beneath her. I saw her stop, her whole body stiffen when she got close enough to see what I had already seen. She put a hand over her mouth. For a second, I thought she might turn back, but she didn't. She crouched beside the man. The man made a sound then, a gurgling, wet sound that carried across the road and through the glass like it was right inside the car with me. My chest tightened. I wanted to cover my ears, but I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. Great-grandma finally reached over and touched my arm. "Baby, don't watch," she whispered, her voice shaky but kind. But I did. I watched Mom kneel beside him, saw her lips move, though I couldn't hear what she was saying. The man tried to lift his head, his body twitching in jerks that looked painful, unnatural. He didn't have hands to reach for her with, didn't have legs to shift himself closer. He was just there, trapped in what was left of him. I realized then that death didn't always come quick. Sometimes it lingered, cruel and slow, while the world looked on. The man's groaning rose into something sharper, something that didn't sound human, like an animal caught in a trap. It echoed off the basin's concrete walls and the trees that lined the road, bouncing back until it felt like it was coming from everywhere at once. I shrank back in my seat, covering my ears too late. The sound was already inside me, shaking my ribs. Mom's voice cut through it, firm but shaking. Just stay with me, okay? Just stay with me. I saw her fumbling for her phone, trying to balance it with one hand, while keeping the other near what was left of him. She turned her head sharply, gagged, then pressed her lips together tight like she was swallowing it down. Great-Grandma squeezed her tissues until they tore, white shreds piling in her lap. "Lord help him, Lord help him," she kept saying, rocking slightly in her seat. Her eyes were wet, but she wouldn't look at me. She was afraid if she did, I'd see too much written there. I couldn't stop staring at the man. His shirt was torn open, dark patches spreading fast. The ground beneath him was wet, black-red, in the daylight, seeping out in slow streams. I noticed something shiny near his side, a twisted piece of metal poking through him like a thorn. Every time he breathed, his whole chest rattled. My mouth went dry. I whispered, "Mom," but she didn't hear me. Maybe she couldn't. The man's head rolled toward the sound of her voice. That's when I saw his eyes. Wide. Too wide. They were glassy, but alive, locked on her face with a desperation that made my stomach lurch. He tried to form words. His lips opened, cracked and wet, but all that came out was a bubbling noise. Mom leaned closer, trembling. "Don't try to talk, don't," but he did. He pushed the sound out anyway. It was broken, slurred, but I thought just for a second, he said, "Please." My chest felt too tight, my hands gripping the seatbelt like it was the only thing keeping me from falling into that nightmare outside the glass. I wanted to shut my eyes, but I couldn't. I wanted to call to Mom, drag her back to the car, but the words wouldn't leave my throat. The scream I'd heard before had been awful, but this slow unraveling in front of me was worse. And then the man started thrashing. The man jerked like someone had yanked a string inside him. His whole body heaved, head snapping back, mouth opening in a soundless scream. Then it came raw and horrible, splitting the air so sharp it made my teeth ache. Mom stumbled back, nearly dropping her phone, her hand flying to her mouth. God, she whispered. His torso bucked against the pavement, what was left of his arms flailing as if they were still there. Stumps smacked the ground with sick, wet thuds. I'd never seen a person move like that, all wrong angles and no control. Didn't he even look human anymore? It looked like something trying to climb out of its own skin. My throat tightened. I pulled my knees up in the seat, trying to make myself smaller, trying to disappear. The glass felt like it wasn't enough between me and him. I wanted to cover my ears, but I couldn't move. Great-Grandma was praying louder now, fast, her voice quaking. Oh Lord, bring mercy, bring mercy." The words tumbled over each other, spilling out until they were just sounds, not even prayers anymore. Mom crouched, trembling like she was about to touch him but couldn't bring herself to. She kept saying, it's okay, even though it wasn't. Her voice cracked on the last okay. The man's body slammed once against the ground, and then went stiff. His eyes bulged, his jaw hanging slack. For a second, the world went dead quiet, except for the buzzing in my ears. I thought he was gone.
No?
But then he sucked in a breath so sharp it whistled, like a broken flute. I flinched so hard my seatbelt dug into my chest. My eyes burned. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. He made another sound, this one low, wet, like he was drowning. His head turned again, and for just a second, his gaze swept across the car window. His eyes caught mine. Even through the glass, I swore he saw me. My stomach dropped. I curled tighter in my seat, tears burning at the corners of my eyes, wishing Mom would get back in the car, wishing we could drive away, wishing the man would stop looking at me with those awful, pleading eyes. And then he started convulsing again, harder this time. His body twisted like something invisible had hooked into his spine and yanked. His back arched off the pavement, stomach heaving upward, head bent so far back it looked like his neck should have snapped. The sound that ripped from his throat was no longer a scream. It was deeper, broken, bubbling with spit and blood. Mom cried out and reached toward him again, but her hand trembled so violently she had to brace herself on her knees just to keep from falling forward. Stay with me, she begged, but her words shook like they were made of glass. The stumps of his legs slapped against the gravel in frantic, jerky movements, like he was trying to run without legs, trying to crawl somewhere, anywhere, but only dragging himself in bloody circles. The sight made my stomach twist until I thought I was going to throw up. Great-grandma's voice pitched higher, louder, her words slurring together into one endless stream of prayer. She clutched at the cross around her neck, her knuckles white, her entire body rocking in rhythm with her whispers. Inside the car, the air was hot and thick, pressing down on me. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, making everything sound far away and close all at once. I wanted to close my eyes, to bury my face against the seat, but I couldn't stop watching him. The man's eyes rolled wildly, whites flashing, mouth foaming now. Every convulsion made a wet smack against the pavement. Every sound he made stabbed at me, sharp and desperate. And then he tried to speak. The words came out warped, shredded by blood and panic. Help! It was barely a whisper, but it was there. His gaze found Mom again, pleading, drowning. Mom shook her head, tears streaking down her cheeks. We're helping, please, just stay still. She fumbled her phone, dialing again, her voice breaking into the receiver. You have to hurry, Heezies. The man screamed again. It's louder than before, a high tearing wail that carried across the road and into the trees. It didn't sound human anymore. It sounded like something was being ripped apart from the inside. I pressed my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes shut, but it didn't stop. I could still feel it in my chest, rattling my ribs. When I opened my eyes again, he was staring right at me through the glass. His jaw hung open, blood dripping down his chin. His body trembled violently, but his eyes, they stayed locked on mine. I couldn't breathe. It felt like he was trying to drag me into that same pain, that same panic, like if I looked away, he'd slip further, vanish, die, and it would be my fault. I still remember the way the morning light looked that date, too bright, too ordinary for what was about to happen. It was spring, and the air carried that sharp coolness that made everything feel crisp and awake. I should have been in a good mood, but from the start, something felt off. It was small things. Like how Tyler's seat was empty in first period. He wasn't the type to skip ever. He wasn't a strata perfectionist or anything like that. But he showed up. Even on the days he was sick, he'd shuffle in looking half dead with his hood pulled over his head. I thought maybe he just overslept. But then he missed second period, then third. And by lunch, people started to whisper, maybe he's skipping, maybe he's sick. Nobody seemed all that worried, but I couldn't sit still. Tyler was my closest friend. It's not in the cheesy picture-perfect way. We didn't hang out in big groups or go to parties together. It was more like we just understood each other in a way no one else at school ever did. He was quiet but funny when you got past the surface. He had this strange way of finding calm in the middle of chaos, like nothing could rattle him. So him not showing up, yeah, it rattled me. By the end of the day, I was restless. Everyone else had shrugged it off, but I couldn't. I packed up my bag, said goodbye to a couple people in the hallway, and I remember my hands were trembling. Didn't even know why yet. I told myself I'd just swing by his place, maybe tease him about ditching school. His house was in T, far from mine, 10 minutes on foot if you cut through the back trail by the creek. I'd walked it dozens of times before. The dirt path lined with chain-link fences on one side and old oaks leaning over the other. The sun was dipping behind the neighborhood rooftops as I reached his street. It was quiet, the kind of suburban quiet that feels heavier than silence. His family's house sat in the middle of the block beige siding with white trim, the same as every other house. But I knew every detail of it, the crack on the driveway where we used to chalk out ridiculous obstacle courses, the faded welcome mat on the porch that still said, "Home Sweet Home." I reached for the doorknob, trembling so badly that I had to wrap both hands around it, as the cold metal sent a jolt up my arms. I hesitated, fingers gripping tighter. My stomach was twisting into knots, and my throat felt full of cement. I knew what I might find behind that door, and yet part of me couldn't stop. I pushed the door open slowly, the hinges whining in protest. The light from the hallway spilled across the floor, touching the edges of the room, and that's when I saw him. Tyler. He was lying on the floor, his body still unnaturally quiet. At first I thought he was asleep, maybe passed out. But the second I saw the unnatural angles of his limbs, the way his body was splayed and broken, the smell that hit me in waves, I knew. I knew he wasn't sleeping. The world went silent, except for the blood pounding in my ears. My knees gave way, and I sank onto the carpet, my hands pressing to my mouth to keep from screaming. Oh God, oh God. I whispered, but my voice barely sounded human. His eyes were open, glassy, frozen in that last moment. The thing that hurt the most was just that he was gone. It was the look in his eyes. It's confused, afraid, alone. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My mind kept trying to make sense of what I was seeing, to rationalize it in some way. But it was impossible. No excuses, no explanations could fix it. I heard the phone ring in my pocket, and the sound made me flinch. Mom's voice she'd called. I wanted to answer to tell her, but the words wouldn't come. I couldn't speak. I crawled closer, my fingers brushing against the edge of his shirt. The heat of his body was gone. The silence of the room pressed down harder, and I felt something cold and heavy settle into my chest. Fear, shock, grief, all mixed together in a tight, impossible knot. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vanish from that house forever. But I couldn't. I couldn't leave him there alone. I just sat there, staring, until the world outside my mind started to blur. I finally forced my shaking fingers to fumble for my phone. The screen lit up like a tiny beacon, and I pressed the numbers of Mom's voicemail before I could think. My voice came out hoarse and broken. Mom, it's Tyler. Something's wrong. Please, come quick. I couldn't even finish the sentence. The words hitched in my throat, and I nearly dropped the phone. My whole body was trembling, knees pressed into the carpet, and the room felt like it was closing in around me. The minutes dragged. I heard my own breath, harsh and shallow, loud in my ears. Every creak of the house sounded amplified. Every flicker of sunlight through the blinds made my stomach lurch, and the door opened and Mom was there. She didn't say anything at first. She just crouched beside me, her arms trembling as she pulled me close. I could feel her panic, but she forced herself to breathe, to be steady for me, even when her own eyes were wide and wet. Oh God, oh God. She whispered, pressing her forehead to mine. We'll call. The words didn't really reach me. All I could do was stare at him, at Tyler, lying there, and the shock hit me again like a wave. My stomach twisted, my hands balled into fists, and I couldn't stop the sobs that broke out, racking my small body. Mom grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I could hear the operator's calm voice in the background. And my mother tried to answer, to explain, but every sentence came out, garbled, fractured. She kept glancing at me, then at him, and I realized she was trying to hold herself together just to help me hold together. Minutes later, though, it felt like our SPOLIS and paramedics arrived. They moved quickly, professionally, voices low but firm. I stayed behind Mom, pressing against her, trying not to scream, trying not to look, but I couldn't stop. Every move they made, every bag they opened, every question they asked, only cemented it further. Tyler was gone. There was nothing to save. No last-minute miracle, just the cold, horrifying finality of it all. I remember one officer kneeling beside him and closing his eyes gently. I had never seen death like that. So close, so immediate. My small hands covered my face as I tried to block it all out, tried to imagine that this wasn't real. But it was real. I couldn't unsee it. I was 8 years old the night I saw something that still gnaws at the edges of my memory like a shadow I can T-shake. My father had taken me outside during a family party we were hosting. One of those summer nights when the air feels thick with humidity and everyone talks, loudly because the music inside is thumping. The adults had been drinking, laughing, their voices echoing through the open windows of the house. My cousins were chasing each other around the yard, but I was tired of the noise, and Dad seemed to sense it. Come on, champ, he said, patting me on the back. Let's get some air. We walked down toward the edge of the property, where the patchy grass gave way to the tree line. The party sounds faded into the background hum of cicadas and frogs. The sky was clear, the kind of deep navy blue that swallows you whole when you stare up at it too long. Dad lit a cigarette, the orange glow flaring briefly against his face. He looked younger to me then, not weighed down yet by the years that would come, though his eyes were tired even in those days. I remember asking him if he thought aliens were real. Dan. Know why the question came to me just then? Maybe because the night sky was so full of stars. Maybe because my cousins had been teasing me about little green men earlier that week. Dad chuckled. They are? Let's hope they don't care much about folks like us. It was right after he said that when we heard it, the sound of branches snapping, deliberate and heavy, like something walking just inside the tree line. I froze, thinking maybe it was a deer, but there was a rhythm to the steps, to even. My father's hand tightened on my shoulder. He flicked his cigarette away, squinting into the dark. Then, between the trunks, I saw it. A pale shape. Not a deer. Not anything I'd ever seen before. It was tall, taller than my father, with limbs too long and a head too large, like it didn't quite fit with the rest of its body. I didn't see eyes at first, just the way the moonlight bounced off its skin smooth, almost wet-looking. It stood there, watching us. My breath hitched, and I remember whispering, "Dad." He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. And then its head tilted, a sharp, jerky motion that made my stomach lurch. Its head tilted again, sharper this time, like a dog catching a sound, only there was nothing animal about the way it moved. The silence between us was unbearable. No crickets, no frogs. Just the faint buzz of electricity from the porch light back at the house. I could feel my father's hand still pressing on my shoulder, hard enough that it almost hurt, but he didn't ease up. He hadn't said a word since he tossed his cigarette, and I could tell he was holding his breath. I was too. The thing shifted one step forward. I heard the wet crunch of leaves under its foot, if you could even call it a foot. Its legs bent strangely, backward at the knee, like a bird's. My stomach dropped. For a second, I wanted to bolt, to run screaming back to the house. But something about the way it looked at us rooted me in place. I finally saw its eyes when it moved closer to enormous black orbs that reflected no light, like holes punched in its face. They didn't blink, didn't shift away. They were locked on me. "Dad," I whispered again, barely audible. "Stay still," he muttered. The first words he'd spoken, so low, I almost thought I imagined them. The thing tilted its head the other way, slower this time, deliberate, like it was studying us. The movement wasn't clumsy, was too smooth, too precise. I remember feeling like we weren't looking at some wild animal that stumbled out of the woods. No, it was thinking, deciding something. Then came the sound. But it wasn't a growl, or a hiss, or anything like that. It was a hum, low and vibrating, almost mechanical, but it filled the air in my chest and ears like I was standing next to a subwoofer. My knees buckled under it, and I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The hum was inside me. The porch light flickered. I looked back toward the house for just a second, instinct telling me to run, but the windows, the laughter, the music, it all felt so far away, like another world. When I turned back, it had moved. It was closer now, only a few yards from where we stood, and I swear, even though it didn't have a mouth that I could see, I heard something like breathing, slow, in, out. My father's grip tightened. His other hand went toward his pocket, where I knew he kept a small pocket knife. But he didn't pull it out. Maybe he knew it wouldn't matter. The hum stopped. The silence was worse. The thing leaned forward, its long arms dangling, its fingers grazing the ground. And then, with one quick twitch, it snapped its head back upright, staring at me so directly it felt like it was inside my skull. I couldn't take it anymore. "Dad, I want to go," I whispered, tears starting to burn at the corners of my eyes. But Dad just said, "Don't move." It was like time itself slowed to a crawl. My heartbeat was so loud I swore the thing could hear it. Maybe that's what it was listening to. My chest rose and fell too quickly, like I was already running, but I didn't dare move an inch. Its eyes never blinked, never even flickered. Just two black pits locked onto me as if my father wasn't even there. The hum was gone, but the air still felt charged, like the way it gets before a thunderstorm. My skin prickled. I could smell the faint sting of ozone, though there wasn't a cloud in the sky. The thing tilted its head forward just a fraction, but enough to make me shiver in. Then it froze, perfectly still. Its chest didn't rise. I tried to see if it was even breathing, but there was nothing. No movement at all, as if it had turned into stone right there in front of us. My dad's hand shook on my shoulder, though he tried to keep it steady. He leaned slightly, his lips brushing my ear. His breath was hot, trembling when he whispered, "Don't make you move." I nodded just once, the tiniest movement I thought I could get away with. The silence pressed down on us like a weight. My legs ached from standing still, but I couldn't shift, couldn't risk it. Every nerve in my body screamed that if I moved, if I twitched even a little, it would be on me in a heartbeat. Behind us, I could still hear the faint thump of bass from the party in the living room, muffled through the walls. I wanted to scream, to call out for someone, anyone, but the sound died in my throat. It felt wrong, like if I made a noise, something worse than what I was seeing would happen. Then it tilted its head again. Not a curious tilt this time. It was sharp, sudden, unnatural.
Ow.
The motion jerked so quickly it made my stomach lurch. And those black eyes seemed to widen, though they couldn't. They were just holes. It wasn't curious anymore. It was focused. I gripped the hem of my t-shirt in both fists to keep my hands from shaking. The sweat on my palms made the fabric damp. My dad slowly shifted his weight, careful not to make a sound. His fingers slid away from my shoulder and rested on my back, guiding me ever so slightly behind him. But the thing followed the movement instantly. Its head turned with a twitch, eyes tracking, never leaving me. The wind shifted then, carrying the faint smell of the bonfire. Some of the older cousins had started near the shed. The smoke curled in the air, and for the first time, I noticed how unnaturally still the trees were. No branches swayed, no crickets sang, just us, the smoke, and it. Then its hand twitched. Just the slightest flecks of those long, thin fingers against the ground. I swear they scraped against the dirt like nails on chalkboard. My body screamed to run. My father's hand pressed harder against my back, and the worst part, could feel it leaning closer, not with my eyes, but somewhere deeper, inside. It's like it was in my head, waiting for me to break first. 1 second, it was there and moving, staring through me with those pit-black eyes, and the next. It wasn't. No sound, no flash, no blur of movement, just gone. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I had finally cracked under the tension. But my dad's hand, still heavy on my back, told me I hadn't imagined it. He didn't say a word, didn't even look down at me. He just turned, led me inside, shut the door, and locked it with every bolt we had. We never talked about it. Not once. Not that night, not the next morning, not ever. The silence was its own kind of pact, but the absence was worse than the presence. I started noticing things. The first year after that night, I'd wake up at almost the exact same time, 2:03 a.m., every night, no matter when I went to bed. And every time the moonlight coming through my bedroom window was wrong, wasn't soft or pale or steady like it should have been, it was broken. Like something tall was standing just out of sight, cutting through the glow, casting sharp, shifting shadows against my wall. I'd sit up in bed, heart pounding, staring hard at the window. But when I worked up the courage to yank the blinds open, there'd be nothing there. It's just the empty yard, washed in silver light. For a while I thought it was trees or a trick of my imagination, but it kept happening. Months passed, seasons changed, but that fractured moonlight always came back. Always around 2 a.m. Always jagged, as though something wanted me to know it was there, but not let me see it. I tried telling my mom once. She just smiled, rubbed my hair, told me kids had wild imaginations. I didn't push it. If I mentioned the wrong thing, she might tell my dad, and I couldn't stand the idea of reopening what we had silently buried. But deep down, I knew he noticed it too. Some nights, I'd hear him pacing down the hall at the exact time I woke up, his heavy boots creaking the floorboards. Once, I caught him standing at the kitchen window, staring out into the yard. He didn't move, didn't turn when I walked in, just stood there, the same way we had stood frozen that night. And when I asked him if he was okay, he just muttered, "Go back to bed, son." His voice sounded cracked, like it had been sitting in his throat all night waiting to be used. 2 years passed like that, 2 a.m. visits, broken moonlight, and silence between us. The shadows stretched further, crept deeper into my room. Sometimes they didn't fade right away when I sat up. Sometimes they clung to the corners as if they didn't want to leave. The worst was the night I swear I heard my name whispered. Not loud, not sharp, just a low murmur that threaded through the hum of my ceiling fan. My heart nearly broke through my ribs. I yanked the blinds open and again, nothing. Just the empty yard, glowing quiet under the moon. But the voice stayed in my head, echoing long after it stopped, and I knew whatever had vanished that night never really left. The strange thing about it all was how normal life carried on. I went to school, I played baseball in the summers, I sat with friends at lunch and laughed at the dumbest jokes. Outwardly, nothing about me screamed haunted, but inside it was like I was holding my breath all the time, waiting for the next shadow, the next broken beam of moonlight to remind me. It didn't come every night anymore. That almost made it worse. I'd go a week or two, maybe even a month, without waking at 2 a.m., without hearing the faint rustle outside my window. Then, just when I'd start to think maybe it was over, I'd wake again to the silence, to that stillness so thick I could taste it, to the cold sweat that came even before I sat up. One winter night when I was 10, I woke to something different. The shadows weren't broken this time. They were gone. My room was drenched in pure white light, so bright it looked like midday, even though I knew it was the middle of the night. I sat there frozen in bed, staring at my window. No branches, no curtains, no shapes at all. Just a glare so solid it looked painted. I was too scared to get up, but curiosity had its claws in me. Slowly shaking, I slid out from the covers and crept to the glass. My hands were sweating, my knees weak. I lifted the blinds a crack. There was nothing outside. Just our yard, blanketed in snow. The kind of snow that glowed under a full moon. Except there was no moon. I craned my neck, searching the sky, but it was black, cloudless, starless. The light wasn't coming from above. It was coming from everywhere else, as if the ground itself had started shining. And then, in the far corner of the yard, I saw the snow dip in. A long, narrow impression, perfectly straight, pressed deep into the white. A footprint. No, not a footprint. A series of them. One after another, marching closer to the house. I backed away from the window, my stomach twisting so tight I thought I might throw up. I didn't scream. I didn't call for my dad. Some part of me knew better than to make a sound. I climbed back into bed, buried myself under the blankets, and prayed until I passed out. By morning, the yard looked normal again. Smooth, untouched snow. My dad didn't say anything, but I noticed his boots by the back door, wet with melted frost. He'd seen it too. I knew it then. But he never said a word. The years went on like the tad disturbances, vanishing by sunrise, erased like they were never there. Only I remembered. Only he remembered. And the silence between us about it grew heavier than the fear itself. It wasn't until I was 13 that the next real change came. That was when I woke at 2 a.m., not too light, not to shadows, but to a tapping sound, soft, steady, against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. I lay there frozen, too scared to move. And when I finally gathered the nerve to glance at the window, the blinds were bent outward from the inside. I don't even know why we decided to drive out that late. It was just past midnight, a Tuesday that felt like any other. And we were taking Sarah to the Greyhound station before her trip back home. 3 of us crammed into my beat-up sedan and me, driving, Jamie riding shotgun, and Sarah in the back, headphones in, nodding along to some playlist that sounded far too cheerful for 1 a.m. The roads were quiet, mostly empty except for the occasional rig lumbering down the highway. We had taken the long route, the one that cut through a string of truck stops and gas stations just off the interstate. Nothing remarkable about it. We joked about stopping for gas and snacks, but Sarah kept shaking her head, laughing behind her headphones. "I just want to get there," she said. That's when I noticed it. A truck. Parked across the lot from us, at a dimly lit stop. Nothing strange about that at first. Big rigs sit everywhere, but this one wasn't just parked. Its cab light was blinking. Red, slow, deliberate. A tiny beacon that caught my eye through the windshield, making my stomach twist. I squinted through the windshield. There was a figure inside, leaning out just enough to make me notice it. The driver. A man, middle-aged baseball cap, shadowed across his face from the cab light, and he was holding something. A camera. It was pointed straight at us. Do you guys see that? I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Jamie leaned forward, squinting. See what? That truck? The guy, he's pointing a camera at us. Sarah pulled her headphones out and craned her neck. What are you talking about? He's taking pictures or something, I said, my voice suddenly a notch higher than I liked. Hey, look, see the blinking light? Jamie finally noticed it, and her eyes widened. Holy crap, that is creepy. I felt my pulse quickened. The trucker didn't move much, but his eyes, well, I couldn't see his eyes exactly. But the way his head was tilted, the camera aimed, made me feel like he knew everything we were doing. Like he had been waiting. I wanted to drive away. I wanted to just hit the gas and leave this stupid lot behind, but something held me. I didn't want to freak out Sarah more than she already would be if we sped off in panic. The blinking light went off, then back on, and the man shifted slightly, adjusting the camera. I could see his arms now, smooth, steady movements, not frantic or nervous, just deliberate. I swallowed hard and whispered, "We need to go. Right now." Sarah frowned. "Are you sure you're not imagining it?" But Jamie leaned closer to the window, the white of her eyes bright in the cab light. Nope, definitely not imagining it. I hit the accelerator. The tires crunched against the gravel. But as we moved forward, the truck didn't leave, didn't even idle. It just stayed there, cab light blinking, camera aimed. A chill ran down my spine. The gravel crunched under my tires, a harsh grating sound in the dead silence of the lot. My hands were tight on the wheel, knuckles white. I kept glancing in the rear view, hoping maybe he'd finally leave, that maybe I'd imagined the camera, but no. The truck was still there, still blinking, still pointed at us. Jamie leaned closer, whispering, "He's following us, isn't he?" I swallowed hard, wishing I could say no, but the tight knot in my stomach told me otherwise. I eased the car forward, keeping my eyes on the lot's exit, trying to stay calm. The highway lights beyond promised freedom, normalcy. Sarah in the back finally spoke, soft and nervous. Why would he? Why would he even do that? I didn't have an answer. I didn't want to think about it. It wasn't just a random trucker with a camera. The way he moved, steady, precise, watching, he knew we were there. Maybe he'd been there all along. I glanced sideways at Jamie. Her face was pale in the dim dashboard glow. "Just don't look at him. Just drive," she said. I obeyed. Feet light on the pedals, slowly moving through the lot, praying we wouldn't give him a reason to act. But when I turned to the exit, my blood ran cold. The truck had moved. It wasn't following closely yet, not on the road, but it had shifted in the lot. Its headlights were aimed at us now, brighter, more aggressive. The cab blinked again, red light piercing the darkness, and I swear the man inside leaned forward as if studying us more carefully, marking our faces. I slammed my foot down, tires squealing slightly, heart hammering. "Go, go," I shouted. Sarah ducked instinctively, pulling her knees up. Jamie whispered something I couldn't hear, but the tremor in her voice was unmistakable. The truck remained for a moment at the lot's edge, then it started following. Just slowly, just enough to keep pace without drawing attention from any other vehicles on the empty road. We merged onto the highway, the orange streetlights casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. The lot behind us fell into darkness, but I could still feel him there somewhere, watching, waiting. I gripped the wheel tighter. "Keep your eyes on the road," I said, almost to myself. Jamie's hands were trembling in her lap. Sarah's gaze kept darting to the rear view, even though I tried to block her line of sight. Minutes dragged. I forced myself to breathe, to focus. Then, just when I thought maybe it was gone, the blinking light appeared again. It's far off in the distance, but unmistakable. The camera. The man, still tracking us. Cold fear settled in my chest. "Do you think he can see us through the windows?" Sarah whispered, voice barely audible. I didn't answer. I didn't want to think about it. The highway stretched endlessly before us, but every mile felt like inches, every second dragging like hours. The tires hummed against the asphalt, my grip tight on the steering wheel as I forced myself to focus on the road ahead. But the blinking red light in my rear view was relentless. stubbornly keeping pace with us. I could barely make out the shape of the truck now's cab, high and menacing in the distance. Headlights cutting through the night like twin knives. Don't slow down, Jamie whispered, her voice cracking. I'm not slowing, I said, though my foot had pressed harder against the accelerator than I'd intended. The old sedan groaned in protest, but it obeyed. Sarah leaned forward from the back seat, eyes wide. What if he's following us all the way to the station? I swallowed hard. We just keep going. No sudden stops, no turns he can predict. The highway was deserted, but each mile stretched longer than the last. Every reflection off a signpost, every flicker of passing light made my heart leap. I tried to focus on the familiar markers, mile signs, overpasses, the occasional diner glowing in the distance, but the truck never faded. And then it started changing lanes. Not aggressively, not like he wanted to ram us. Just like he was maneuvering around obstacles in perfect synchronization with us, never letting us out of his sight. The blinking red light now seemed closer, more precise, like a predator tracking its prey. Jamie's hands were white on her knees, and Sarah was clutching the seatbelt with trembling fingers. I could feel their panic radiating through the car. I think he's trying to scare us, Jamie muttered. Scare us? Said, voice tight. He's following us. It's more than scare. I could see the first hints of fatigue in the truck's slow. Steady pursuits, the cab's headlights dipping slightly as it rode the uneven road, but it didn't relent. It stayed exactly where it needed to, the blinking red light punctuating the darkness, keeping us in constant tension. I tried to turn off ahead, a narrow exit that led to a back road I knew. My plan was simple. Get off the main highway, shake him in the dark lanes where streetlights were sparse. I swerved onto the exit. The gravel crunched under our tires and the sedan bounced slightly. For a heartbeat, I dared to hope we might lose him. Then the blinking light reappeared behind us, unmistakable. The truck now cutting across the shoulder to follow. Shit, I muttered, gripping the wheel so tight it ached. The chase was no longer just on the road. It was a mental game. Every curve, every rise, every dark stretch felt like a test. I could feel my nerves fraying with each passing second, and the realization that he could be watching us with that camera, it was worse than any weapon. And in that moment, with the dark road stretching endlessly ahead, I understood we weren't just driving away from a truck. We were running from someone who knew exactly how to keep us trapped in fear, mile after mile. The back road stretched ahead like a ribbon of black tar under the dim glow of scattered street lamps, each one flickering like it might die any second. I kept my eyes glued to the rearview mirror, watching that red blinking light, the heartbeat of this nightmare pulsing steadily behind us. Do you think he's recording everything? Sarah whispered from the back seat, her voice trembling. I don't know, I admitted. My throat was dry, my chest tight. I just keep moving, don't look away. The sedan hit a patch of loose gravel, tires skidded slightly, the car fishtailing. My hands shook as I corrected the wheel. Behind us, the truck adjusted its course immediately, almost eerily in sync. It didn't honk, it didn't flash. It just moved, always moving, always keeping us in the frame. Jamie's knuckles were white as she gripped the dashboard. Why? Why won't he leave us alone? I don't know, I snapped, my own fear making my voice sharper than I intended. Then I immediately regretted it, swallowing hard and forcing myself to take a deep breath. Just stay calm. If we panic, we lose control. The road narrowed suddenly, trees arching overhead to form a tunnel of shadow. The darkness seemed almost tangible, pressing in from all sides. And the truck's headlights were far off now, but that blinking red light remained, distant yet insistent. It was like it was floating above the road, following us with supernatural precision. I saw an upcoming fork-one path that curved deeper into the woods, another that led back toward the highway. My gut screamed to take the wooded path, hoping the curves and shadows would give us some cover. My mind screamed that the highway was safer, more traffic to mask us. Wooded path, I muttered, almost automatically. The tires crunched over the gravel as I veered sharply, the car tilting against the curve. Sarah gasped behind me. Jamie pressed closer to the passenger door, eyes wide. "I don't like this," she said. "He'll just follow." "He can't follow like this forever," I said, though even as I said it, I doubted my own words. The car rattled along the narrow, uneven road. Branches scraped against the side panels. Gravel sprayed in tiny showers with every turn. And somewhere in the darkness behind us, I could see it. A faint glow as the truck adjusted its route again, keeping us within view. That blinking red light, slow and deliberate, mocking us. Every nerve in my body screamed. Every instinct honed from countless horror movies and cautionary tales was screaming that this was more than just some creeper with a camera. He was patient, calculating, persistent, and somehow he knew our every move. I tightened my grip on the wheel. My pulse thudded so loudly I was sure the trucker could hear it through the night, see it in my eyes. My only thought was to survive, to get Sarah to the Greyhound station, and never, ever look back. But deep down I knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The back road twisted sharper now, and the shadows between the trees deepened into almost solid black. I could feel the sedan's suspension straining with every uneven patch of gravel, every tree root pushing up through the asphalt. My pulse was a drum in my ears, my hands slick with sweat as I gripped the wheel so tight I thought my knuckles would snap. Jamie whispered something behind me, but I barely heard it over the roar of my own panic. Sarah was pressing her face into the back of her seat, eyes wide and fixed on the rearview mirror, as if she could keep the blinking red light at bay just by watching it. Then I saw a faint, moving shadow just at the edge of the trees. Not the truck exactly, but something following the rhythm of the blinking light. My stomach dropped. "Don't look away," I muttered to myself more than anyone else. The road forked again, narrower now, and I had to make a choice fast. I jerked the wheel to the left, tires screeching across the gravel. Branches scraped the side of the car, leaving tiny streaks of bark and leaves. The truck's headlights appeared through the trees moments later, and my stomach lurched. It had followed unbelievably precise, keeping pace without even a sound beyond the soft crunch of its tires. The blinking red light seemed closer now, almost personal, like it was taunting us. My mind raced with possibilities. Why was he doing this? What did he want? A million thoughts collided at once, but the only one that mattered was survival. The trees opened up into a small clearing ahead. I could see a dim street light in the distance, marking the beginning of another stretch of road. Maybe I could lose him there. "Almost there," I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady, just a little farther. But the truck didn't relent. It didn't give up. That relentless, measured blinking was all it took to remind us it wasn't just following, we were being tracked. Every movement, every turn we made, it mirrored. Jamie's hand gripped mine suddenly. "I think he's trying to scare us." "More than just follow us?" I swallowed hard, the dread settling deeper into my chest. "Yeah, I think he wants us panicked." Ahead, the faint glow of the streetlight grew, a sliver of hope cutting through the oppressive darkness. "What?" The truck's light, his light seemed to reach farther than it should, touching our car in ways that made my skin crawl. We weren't safe yet. Not by a long shot. The clearing stretched ahead, and the dim streetlight offered the faintest promise of safety. I eased the car forward, keeping a careful eye on the shadows around us. But that blinking red light stayed, unmoving, insistent. "Do you see it?" Jamie's whisper cut through my panic. I swallowed hard, nodding, though my throat was dry. "Yeah, he's still there." Sarah pressed her forehead to the back of her seat, shaking. "Why won't he just leave us alone?" I didn't answer. There was no answer. All I could do was drive, inching toward the light, hoping to find anyone awake at the station to intervene. Not in the way a truck normally moves, but precise, deliberate. He swerved slightly, taking the far edge of the clearing, camera aimed directly at us. For a moment, I felt like we were inside a predator's eye, every nerve on fire, every instinct screaming to run faster. I hit the accelerator. Gravel sprayed behind us. Tires screamed. The truck's headlights cut into the darkness, following perfectly. He wasn't just trailing us, he was performing, matching every motion, every desperation in my driving. Jamie's hands gripped the dashboard so tightly I thought she'd break it. "Do something," she shouted. panic raw in her voice. "I am doing something," I yelled back, voice shaking. "Just keep your eyes on the road." The sedan bounced over a small rise, the clearing opening just a little more. And that's when I saw it movement on the ground beside the truck. Something flashing silver in the light. He was holding the camera steadily, snapping shots with a metronome-like rhythm. It's not random, not panicked, focused, calculated. I swerved slightly, trying to put some distance, but every maneuver seemed mirrored by him. The blinking red light wasn't a light anymore. It was a tether, invisible yet impossible to break. My heart hammered in my chest as the clearing stretched before us. The station was just ahead. I could see it now, doors dark, windows reflecting the weak streetlight. The promise of witnesses, of safety, of something beyond this nightmare. The truck maintained its relentless pace. No hesitation, no falter. And then, suddenly, a figure moved beside the cab, leaned out slightly. Just enough that I caught the outline of a person, watching, camera still trained on us. I swallowed hard, gripping the wheels so tight my knuckles ached. "Almost there," I muttered under my breath. "We're almost there." But deep down, I knew the chase wasn't over yet. The truck wasn't just following. It was testing us, gauging our fear, marking our reactions. Every blink of that red light drilled the same message into my skull. You cannot hide. You cannot escape. And then the clearing ended. The highway stretched beyond, open and empty, but that didn't feel safe. The unknown beyond the lights felt just as threatening. I kept my foot pressed hard against the pedal, the engine whining under the strain, as the station's lights grew closer. The asphalt felt endless, the shadows pressing in from all sides. Every instinct screamed at me to drive faster, but the car could only take so much before it lost control. Jamie leaned forward, face pale in the dashboard glow. "I can't keep watching him. Can't." "I know," I muttered, voice tight. "Just stay calm. Just a little farther." Tss. Sarah in the back seat was trembling, whispering prayers under her breath. I glanced at her briefly and saw the fear radiating from her, The way her hands clenched the seatbelt so tightly it left marks. My chest ached. Every second felt like a lifetime. The truck wasn't slowing. Its red blinking light was relentless, cutting through the dark like a predator's eye. I noticed how the cab's silhouette stayed perfectly aligned with us, as if some invisible string tied us together. I swerved sharply around a small curve, trying to use the trees to mask our path, to throw him off. Gravel sprayed. Branches whipped past the windows. My heart leaped when I caught movement in the rear view. It mirrored us perfectly, cutting the turn at the same angle, the blinking lights still alive. I tried another tactic. I slammed on the brakes for a brief second, letting the car fishtail slightly. Maybe he'd misjudged the maneuver. But the truck responded instantly, slowing only slightly before snapping back into alignment. He wasn't making mistakes. He didn't panic. "Why won't he leave us alone?" Jamie screamed, voice cracking. "I don't know," I shouted, panic biting into my chest. "I just keep moving." The clearing ended and the road narrowed again. The station's neon sign glowed ahead, weak but visible. I could see a couple of parked trucks near the pumps. People might be inside. Witnesses, my only chance. I pushed the car harder, hugging the edge of the road, swerving slightly to keep the red light out of our direct line. And then something changed. The blinking light faltered, just for a fraction of a second. I noticed it instantly. My pulse spiked. I hesitated briefly. Perhaps adjusting for the turn, perhaps realizing the lot was approaching. That tiny hesitation was enough. I floored it, tires squealing as the sedan shot past the lot entrance. The truck followed for one last instant, engine whining, then blinker off. Lights snapping one final time before he veered slightly. Unable or unwilling to enter the lot's confined space at full speed, I dared to glance back. The cab slowed, stayed on the main road, red lights still blinking faintly in the distance. Then, with a deep, shuddering exhale, it turned away. Gone. For the first time in what felt like hours, I allowed myself to breathe. Jamie and Sarah were both staring at me, wide-eyed, shaking. The silence in the car was almost deafening. We did it," Sarah whispered, barely audible. I didn't answer. I just kept my eyes on the lot ahead, heart still racing, hands trembling on the wheel. The danger wasn't gone entirely. I knew that, but for now, the relentless blinking light was finally behind us. We rolled into the Greyhound lot with the car rattling, like it was about to fall apart. The moment I let off the gas, the sudden quiet was overwhelming. No more roaring engine behind us. No pulsing red glow stalking our bumper. Just the buzz of neon lights humming above cracked asphalt. I pulled the car into a space crookedly, hands still shaking so badly I couldn't line it up straight. The girls didn't say anything. None of us wanted to move, as if opening the doors might somehow invite that truck back. Jamie's voice finally broke the silence. "Is he gone? You? You saw him turn off, right?" I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah, he didn't follow us into the lot. He's gone." But even as I said it, my eyes darted to the road beyond the station. Dark stretches of highway yawned out into the night, and part of me kept expecting to see headlights crest the hill. To see that blinking red light weaving toward us again. Sarah's breathing was ragged in the back. She pressed her palms to her face and let out a muffled sob. He was filming us. Why? Why would he do that? None of us had an answer. And the silence that followed made the question feel heavier, darker, like the night itself was holding on to it. I forced myself to open my door. The lot smelled faintly of fuel and fried food, the buzz of a vending machine humming just outside the small station building. A couple of truckers leaned against the wall by the entrance, cigarettes glowing red in the dark. They looked over when we stumbled out, but their expressions didn't change, just casual indifference, as if we were any other late-night travelers. But to us, everything felt wrong. Every set of headlights passing by on the distant road made my chest tighten. Every truck in the lot loomed like a shadow waiting to move. "Let's just get inside," I said, voice hoarse. We gathered ourselves, clutching bags, shaking legs unsteady. The glass doors squeaked as we pulled them open, stepping into a wash of fluorescent light that felt far too bright. The station was nearly empty, just a cashier behind bulletproof glass, and a woman sitting slumped on a bench with a backpack at her feet. Jamie whispered to me, "We should tell someone." "The cops? Maybe?" I hesitated, my eyes drifting to the wide windows at the front of the building. Outside, the lot stretched out under buzzing lights. The road was still visible in the distance, dark and silent. For now, yeah, I muttered. Not sure if I believed myself. We'll tell them. But first, let's just sit. We found a bench in the corner, our bodies heavy, nerves stretched thin. And even though I knew we were inside, safe under buzzing lights and stale coffee smells, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, on those endless roads, that trucker was still waiting, watching, because people don't just do something like that once. The first time I noticed the van, I thought it was nothing. I was 14, walking home from the library one late afternoon. The sun was already dipping, leaving long shadows stretching across the sidewalks. The streets were mostly quiet, the kind of stillness you only got in a suburban neighborhood around dinner time. I had my backpack slung over one shoulder, headphones in, and my head full of whatever random songs I was cycling through. That est, when I noticed it. A white van rolling slowly down the opposite side of the street. No logos, no windows, except in the front. Plain, almost too plain. It drove past me, but when I crossed into the next block, I saw it again, idling at the corner like it had been waiting. I remember stopping, pretending to mess with my phone, so I could glance at it without being obvious. The driver was just a shape behind the windshield, face shadowed by the setting sun. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't do anything but sit there watching. My chest tightened. I turned down a side street, walking faster now. My house was still 15 minutes away, but I tried to act casual, forcing myself not to sprint. A couple minutes later, I glanced over my shoulder. The van was there again, creeping along behind me like it had simply reappeared. That was the first time. The second time I told myself it had to be coincidence. It was a week later, a Saturday, and I was walking to a friend's house. Bright afternoon, people out mowing lawns, kids riding bikes, normal, safe. But halfway down Maple Avenue, a familiar boxy shape eased around the corner behind me. White van, same dull paint, same blank sides. My stomach dropped. I crossed the street. The van turned down the same block. I walked faster, slowed down. That time, I ducked behind a set of bushes until I heard it roll by, my heart hammering so hard it made me dizzy. Ow. I didn't tell anyone, not then. How do you explain something like that without sounding paranoid? But then came the third time. By then, it wasn't coincidence anymore. The third time started like nothing. It was late fall, one of those evenings where the sun sets before dinner and the air smells like damp leaves. My mom had asked me to run down to the corner store for bread and milk. It wasn't far, just a 10-minute walk, and I almost welcomed the excuse to get out of the house. I had just left the store, plastic bag swinging in my hand, when I noticed it. Parked across the street, half under a flickering streetlight, the white van. I froze. The back doors faced me, blank like the sides of the thing, but I knew it was the same one. Too clean, too featureless, too deliberate. I told myself I was being stupid, that it was just a van like any other. But as I started walking, I couldn't stop checking over my shoulder. Every time a car passed, I felt my body tense, waiting. But it wasn't until I turned onto my street that I realized the sound of an engine was following me. I glanced back. The van was crawling down the block. Not close, not speeding, just keeping pace. The worst part? I swear I could see someone this time. The driver's shape hunched forward, head slightly turned like he was watching me. And when the streetlight hit the windshield just right, I caught a faint glowing red light inside blinking. At first I thought it was the reflection of a traffic signal. But there were no signals on our street. It hit me all at once. A camera. I gripped the bag so tight the plastic cut into my fingers, my breath quick and shallow. I forced myself to keep walking, not run, even though my legs begged me to sprint the whole way home. When I finally reached my driveway and stepped up onto the porch, I turned. The van was parked at the corner, engine still idling, headlights aimed straight at me, and then, after what felt like forever, it backed up and disappeared into the dark. That was the third time. The fourth time was worse. We cut down the side street fast, sneakers smacking against the cracked pavement. The van's headlights swung across the corner behind us, too wide, too bright. "Shitty's following," Alex hissed. "Go through the alley," I snapped. We darted left between two rows of garages, our shadows warped and stretched in the dim yellow glow of a lone security light. The van couldn't fit down here to narrow, but I could hear the low growl of its engine idling at the corner, like it was waiting for us to slip out again. "Keep going," I whispered. "Don't stop." We zigzagged through blocks I barely knew, hearts hammering. Every time I thought we'd lost him, I'd catch that distant sweep of headlights, just far enough back to make me doubt if it was even real. By the time we stumbled back onto the main street, the van was gone. Just traffic passing, normal night sounds, nothing out of place. We stood there, hands on our knees, gasping for breath. "Maybe we lost him," Alex said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Yeah," I muttered, though I didn't believe it either. We walked home together, all nerves frayed, every set of headlights behind us making us tense up. But no van, no man with the camera. By the time I finally made it inside my house and locked the door, I almost laughed at myself for being so wound up. I almost managed to sleep that night. Almost. Because at 2 a.m., when the neighborhood was dead silent, I woke up with my mouth dry and my chest tight. I don't know why, just knew. Something was wrong. I pulled the curtain back just an inch, and there it was. A white van, sitting quiet at the curb across the street, engine off, no lights, just a faint red blink from the dashboard. It hadn't been a coincidence. It hadn't been paranoia. He'd let us think we'd lost him just to remind me he could come back anytime he wanted. We didn't go home the normal way that night. We cut behind every building we could, weaving through unfamiliar side streets until the muscles in my legs burned and my throat ached from running. Neither of us said much. There wasn't anything to say. Every sound made us flinch. A dog barking, the slam of a distant car door, the whoosh of tires on the main road. By the time we made it back to Alex's place, we were drenched in sweat. He locked the door 3 times, pulled the blinds down tight, and turned off every light in the living room. We sat there in the dark, catching our breath, both of us waiting for the low growl of that engine outside the window. It never came. But that didn't mean the fear left. If anything, it burrowed deeper. From then on, we stopped walking the same streets. The block with the laundromat, off limits, the shortcut by the park. Never again. Even the main drag with the streetlights felt wrong. Every route we once trusted suddenly felt mapped out, like the driver of that van knew them as well as we did. Some nights I'd hear tires crunching slow outside my house. I'd swear the headlights washed across my curtains, too still, too patient. I wouldn't even peek to confirm. I didn't want to see it if it was really there. It got so bad that Alex and I stopped going out at all after dark. If we had to, we begged for rides or biked fast in different directions home. We were constantly circling around in case we caught that familiar white shape out of the corner of our eye. It wasn't just fear of him catching us. It was the sense he'd already memorized us, our steps, our routines, our little comfort zones. The more we tried to stay unpredictable, the more it felt like he was still out there somewhere, waiting for us to slip. I was driving late at night down a narrow dirt road in Thailand, the kind of path that seemed to vanish into the shadows as soon as the headlights touched it. The moon was just a thin sliver in the sky, barely lighting the swaying rice paddies on either side of the road. My truck's engine hummed steadily, the only sound besides the tires crunching over gravel. And for a while it was peaceful. Quiet. Almost too quiet. No. I had no particular destination, just heading south, toward a small guest house I'd booked for the night. The air smelled damp and earthy, heavy with the scent of the fields, and the faint temps of smoke drifting from somewhere far away. I eased the truck forward, careful not to kick up too much dust. My eyes scanned the shadows, half expecting to see animals darting between the stalks. That's when I saw them. At first, I thought they were some kind of roadside decoration. Straw figures, maybe arranged by a farmer or a local ritual I didn't understand. But as I drove closer, my stomach twisted. The shapes weren't made of straw. They were alive, or had been. Chickens. And every single one was missing its head. The lines stretched along the side of the dirt road like some grotesque parade. They were arranged neatly, almost too neatly, their wings splayed at odd angles, feathers glinting in the weak beam of my headlights. The smell hit me then, a metallic, coppery stench that made bile rise in my throat. I slammed on the brakes, the truck jolting forward slightly. "Aye!" I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. How could someone or something have done this? And why? I leaned forward, squinting, trying to make sense of the pattern. The chickens weren't scattered randomly. They were laid out with intent, stretching down the road farther than my headlights could reach. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel as the eerie silence pressed in from the fields around me. Not a single rustle of a bird, not a whisper of wind, just the night and those rows of decapitated creatures staring at me from the dirt. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to scream. But my body was frozen, caught between the urge to flee and the impossibility of tearing my eyes away. I forced myself out of the truck, boots crunching against the gravel, every nerve screaming at me to run. The air felt thicker now, almost sticky, carrying that coppery smell of blood in waves that made my stomach lurch. My headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating the rows of birds like some gruesome pattern etched into the earth. As I stepped closer, I noticed the way their bodies were arranged, not just in random lines. They were facing the same direction, almost like they were meant to be seen by someone driving down this road. Each feathered body glistened in the moonlight, the red stains stark against the pale underbellies. I knelt, my hands trembling, and touched the ground beside one. The dirt was soft, the blood still wet in places, and a small droplet splashed onto my fingers. I jerked back, gagging. The realization hit me fully. This was Antia left over from a farmer's call or some local ritual. This was deliberate, calculated. A sound made me freeze, rustling from the trees along the edge of the road. Not wind, not an animal, something deliberate enough to make my skin crawl. I spun around, shining the headlights into the brush. Nothing. I swallowed hard and tried to calm my shaking hands. It's just, I don't know, maybe a dog, I whispered to myself, though my voice sounded hollow in the night. Then I noticed something at the end of the row, a single chicken, its body upright in an almost human-like posture. Or maybe it was just my eyes playing tricks in the darkness. But the way it was positioned made my heart slam in my chest. It wasn't part of the same line. It was separate. It's almost like it was waiting for me. I stumbled back toward the truck, adrenaline pumping, my mind screaming that I needed to leave. But as I reached the driver's door, I caught movement in the corner of my eye. The bushes at the edge of the road shifted, and I could swear I saw a shadow of figure watching from just beyond the fields. To be a person walking, yet undeniably there. The hairs on my neck stood on end. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys. Every instinct told me to drive, to leave this place behind, but the road stretched endlessly ahead, lined with those silent, headless birds, as if guiding me into whatever nightmare waited deeper in the darkness. I finally got the key into the ignition, fumbling with shaking fingers, heart hammering so loud I was sure it would give me away. The engine coughed to life, sputtering like it too was scared, and I backed the truck up slowly. My headlights swept across the road again, catching the endless line of headless chickens stretching behind me. I couldn't stop staring at them, couldn't stop imagining eyes where their heads used to be, watching, judging, following. My breath came in ragged bursts as I shifted the truck into drive and pressed the pedal. The dirt crunched beneath the tires, the sound deafening in the still night. Halfway down the narrow path, I felt it like a weight pressing in from the fields, something unseen moving just out of sight. A shadow flickered in the periphery of my headlights. A tree branch, a goat. I forced myself to breathe. My knuckles turned white on the wheel. Another flicker, closer this time. Movement behind a clump of brush. I slammed my foot harder on the gas. The tires spun, gravel spraying against the undergrowth. My heart felt like it would explode in my chest. The further I drove, the more I noticed the rhythm of its movement in the shadows, always just beyond the reach of the lights. I didn't look directly. I couldn't. My eyes darted to the road, to the faint reflective sheen of the chicken blood now drying in the moonlight. The line of bodies seemed to stretch forever, like some grotesque omen marking the path. The trees leaned closer on either side, branches snapping occasionally under some unseen weight. And every time I glanced in the mirrors, I thought I saw that shadow again, lingering behind the truck. I forced myself to keep driving, straightening the wheel when the dirt road curved sharply, trying to ignore the wet streaks glinting in the headlights' more blood. Or just moonlight catching on puddles. It didn't matter. I had to get out. By the time I reached the first paved road, my hands were shaking uncontrollably, sweat slick on my forehead. I dared a glance in the rearview mirror. The dirt path stretched back into darkness, silent now. The line of headless chickens was gone, the shadow I'd been sensing gone. But I didn't stop for the next few miles. Not until the streetlights of a small town appeared on the horizon. Even then, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me, even with houses and people around. That night, I swore I'd never drive down a dirt road alone after dark again.